I would not allow this hierarchy concept. That doesn't work for me. Everybody's an individual, everybody's a person, and everybody's views are valid.
Buying abroad can sometimes feel complicated at first. The fact that you're able to take a lot of that intentionally off of an owner's plate the moment they buy in is something that would be very, very well received. If you haven't got yourself to Europe, book yourself a flight and get over there. Portugal is one of the most, I think, beautiful countries. I don't even know if we'll have time to talk about it, but I know there's also serious incentives to living in Portugal. Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rise Above the Ranks. Most people only ever get to see world-class destinations once they're finished. Very few get to hear from the people who actually built them. Today's guest is one of those people. John Calvao is a partner and fund principal at Arrow Global, where he oversees Southern European investments across hospitality, residential, and destination scale developments. And today, we'll be emphasizing on their developments in the Algarve region of southern Portugal. John isn't just selling properties, he's actually building the ecosystems behind them, deciding where the capital goes, how these places operate long-term, and what ownership actually looks like from the inside. What makes John's story so compelling isn't just what Arrow has built, but it's really how it's been built and who it's been built for. So, John, welcome to Rise Above the Ranks. First and foremost, how you doing? And thank you so much for being here.
I'm feeling great. Thanks, James. Pleasure to be here. I've seen a couple of your podcasts, so I'm hoping to match your enthusiasm to your work. But I think we're going to have a great chat about all the things that are going on and we've been able to do out in Portugal in particular.
I love it, man. Well, listen, you know this because we've spoken before, but Portugal is a very special place close to my heart. You know, I grew up in London for the first 21 years, and Portugal was like, you know, a 45-hour flight for me. So we jumped on an EasyJet plane and we would always go to the Algarve. So it's kind of full circle being able to connect with you. My family have deep ties there, and I've always felt that being exposed to different cultures shapes how people see the world, right? And I was lucky when I was younger that was where I'd spend my summer vacation. You, John, grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, a place with, from what I've read, a very strong sense of community and identity. So I guess my first question is, how did that environment shape you as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, Mount Vernon, New York is an urban city just north of the New York City. I think more than it being Mount Vernon, New York, where I grew up, and then until I was in ninth grade, and then I moved to Eastchester, which is just north of that. The early days are really, and what really shaped me are, you know, being from an immigrant family. My parents both came over to work in Portugal to find a better life in the late 60s and then early 70s. My father came with my mother once they got married. And you grew up in this very knit, you know, very tight-knit community of Portuguese. So my parents are both Portuguese. That's part of, I guess, the passion that I have for doing these projects, especially in Portugal. You know, everybody helped each other. I mean, this is early 70s, then into the 80s, where, you know, now I'm 10 or 12 years old. And, you know, my father was a mechanic. My mother was a seamstress. And it was hard going. But we made our way. My parents are super successful. I always say that they're my role models. When people ask me who my role models are, they made a tremendous life for me and my sister and for themselves off of what I would call, you know, average salaries, blue collar salaries. I went through school, was fortunate enough to do that. But those early days of growing up in Mount Vernon and then Eastchester was really, were really done by this fact that, or the whole makeup of it is really being in this Portuguese community that, you know, all of them came over, my aunts, my uncles, cousins, all coming over from Portugal, creating a community and all of us helping each other be successful. And every single one of them, whether it's my parents or their cousins, my uncles, my aunts, all of them had one goal in mind, really, which was to make a better life for themselves and then to have their kids make a better life for them than they had. And so it's been this cycle of each generation getting progressively I would call more successful.
That's great. I mean, it's a beautiful story because when you grow up, whether it's modest, not modest, and one walk of life, most people don't get to leave that life, and it always sort of stays the same, and there's very little change, and there's not anything wrong with that. It's just how it is. So to be able to kind of segue out and all help one another, I'm sure has shaped you to the businessman that you are today. I guess my question for you is, earlier in your career, did you ever feel that pressure to lead differently than who you really were? You know, you were used to one thing, but you were kind of trying to do something else. Did that mean you had to be different?
And that comes a bit to my, I guess, being strong-willed and who I am as a person. I tend to do what I like to do, and when things weren't exactly what I thought were the right thing to do, or they didn't fit who I was trying to be or was trying to do, I moved on, and I've been fortunate enough to have various jobs in great companies along the way. You know, some of them grow and they change over time. Your boss may change, and you may or may not be fully aligned to the process. And again, I've had those changes over my career. I mean, what I would say is I don't conform. That's probably not one of the things I do very well. I think most entrepreneurs and folks that really work in being creative and strategic, et cetera, are probably not the most conformist people in the business. And they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be there to really come up with ideas, think outside the box, do things differently, challenge, et cetera. And every time I've been in these situations, whether it's, you know, early in life or whether it's the way I think about my high school experience and my college experience, and then on to, you know, the professional life, you know, I've worked in jobs. This one that I have today is probably the longest where I've worked. I've worked in other jobs for 8 years and 4 years, but many of those moves have been really related to either things that where it's changed, and so I didn't believe in the process, or I didn't believe in the project anymore. I thought I could add value somewhere else, but I've been fortunate enough to find those jobs. So I would say, you know, probably not conforming. You know, being more of an entrepreneur has been my way to look at life, and so it's probably the reverse of what you said.
Yeah. No, but it all speaks to me, and what I got from that answer, and you started your response with that is, you've always been in businesses that speak to you, that are authentic to you. And then you touched on thinking outside of the box and being creative and doing things differently. And that's sort of my MO. It's like, especially in the real estate industry where you can look at others and see what they do, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It means you have to find what works for you and do what's authentic to who you are in order for it to come out authentically in terms of who you are. So that makes a ton of sense to me, John. Let me ask you this. Is there anything about you, before we really get into Arrow Global, but is there anything about you that people who only know you as an executive would probably be surprised by it or surprised to hear?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would say. The first thing is I'm not particularly tall. So I'm about 5'8". I tend to lie and say I'm 5'9", but I'm probably like 5'8"-ish. And but I was a really good basketball player growing up. I played basketball. I guess part of that is urban. You know, we're playing in Mount Vernon, which is a very high talented area for basketball, and they produce a lot of kids that go to college, D1, and then on to even pros. And I did grow up in that environment, and I played a lot of basketball in my life, and found myself, you know, playing for high school, being very successful. So it is strange when people see me nowadays being an older you know, gentleman and not tall, etc., that I was as good a basketball player as I was. But I was player of the I was like the player of the year in high school and in college and baseball and stuff. So I was very athletic growing up. I still am, but I was very athletic growing up, and that's usually a little bit of a shock just because of my stature. And then the other thing I think that other people don't get from me, I know I'm very lighthearted. I joke around a lot, etc. But I love retro games and video gaming, and I still do that today. So you know, I still play Fortnite with my kids and all that stuff, and it is something that to me is really unwinds me and gives me an outlet to kind of unwind. My wife probably wouldn't say that as much because I tend to maybe scream once in a while and yell. But no, it is it's something I love to do.
I love it. I love it. The only thing we share in common, because I don't game and I'm probably really shit at basketball, is I was filling out an application and I heard my wife burst out laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing at? She's like, you put 5'10" for your height. She's like, you are not 5'10". So we definitely share that. I thought I was 5'10" this whole time. I think I put 6 foot on a couple of applications, but I think I probably 5'6", 5'7".
Well, we share that in common because when I was announced at the basketball games, they'd say 5'10", then I'd walk out there.
I'm definitely not 5'10". Okay, so I do want to talk about Arrow, and I really think what you guys are building in Portugal is like nothing Portugal has ever seen ever before, and certainly what I've seen in terms of the scale of what you're building is not the Portugal I remember growing up when I went to the Algarve. But you joined Arrow when it acquired White Star in Portugal. You stepped into Portugal during that acquisition, is my understanding. And then there was real capital on the line. There was real people watching. Like, what was the moment where you thought this could really either work or this could be a real problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if anyone has context of what I joined in 2010, is quite interesting because it was just after the Lehman situation and the greater financial crisis, and White Star was, and it was until we sold it. It was a Lehman Brothers asset, so it was a Lehman Brothers asset that was under administration or being managed by PwC out of the UK as a UK asset. And I was invited to come and be the CEO of this company that had a bankrupt shareholder. And again, 2010 in Portugal was not what it is today. The first 4 years, 5 years in Portugal are extremely difficult. I mean, we're living the worst probably financial crisis that Portugal has encountered. We were part of the PIGS, which included Portugal and Ireland, Italy, Greece, Spain, all having financial issues, which today, for those who are looking at the market today, they're like, what's the problem? Like, those are the strong countries in Europe these days. Well, that was not the case when I first joined. We had unemployment in Portugal reaching almost 30%. Today, it's less than, I think, 5%. So it was a completely different world. The real estate market had collapsed in Portugal. Obviously, around the world, people were not traveling as much. There wasn't much disposable income. And so when I joined in 2010, the mandate was really to run off the companies, as you do in most administrations, right? You sell the assets and you sell the pieces and you return the money, as much money as you can find. You return that to the creditors. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to find a bankruptcy administrator in PwC, a gentleman there who really believed in what I was doing and allowed us to really grow the business as opposed to just wind it down and sell it off in what I would call in fire sale mode. And so in 2010, 11, 12, when you talk about the deal where I sat there and like, oh boy, this can go one way or another. That deal is a deal called GE Money in Portugal. And what we did is that GE had done a whole bunch of financial services businesses throughout Europe where they became a lender. So they would lend money to mortgages and residential and all kind of auto and all kinds of stuff. But then when the crisis hit, they decided to leave many of these geographies, and they had to sell their platforms and kind of dispose of the assets as they were shrinking back to what GE now is again. And so in that deal, it was very interesting because we had by then become the market leader. So I had taken this company that was with a bankrupt shareholder still in Lehman, but we had built it out and we had grown maybe from 80 people by then to about 180 in a couple of years, and we're growing our assets from 700 million to maybe 1.5. But we were still Lehman Brothers as our shareholder. And I just remember, here's GE stepping in and saying, well, we want to sell this business and we want to sell this business, but we also want you to take on 140 employees of ours in Portugal. And I remember, they bring in their centers of excellence as they do with a big corporation that they are. And here we are on the other side of the desk. And we're like, we're little White Star with a bankrupt shareholder, Lehman Brothers. Wow. And I just remember having the first page of the KYC that they had in the questionnaire formats. And it was, a shareholder. And I'm writing Lehman Brothers. And the second one is, solvency. And I'm like, oh boy, do I even want to answer that question? I'm going to fail the KYC on question 2 of the questionnaire, and which I did, by the way. But you know what? I think with everything we had built by then, and with a lot of faith, and just I think our professionalism and the fact that they really liked us, we did that deal. And I think that was the make or break deal. That was the deal that got us to a really big scale. So all of a sudden we doubled again. And they entrusted us not just what we call distressed assets, which is something that we buy a lot of, but they entrusted us with actually managing their live book, which included, your normal mortgages and car loans, et cetera, that we're paying. And we had to get the blessing of the Bank of Portugal and other regulators, and we did. And so that was the make or break. And I think once we did that deal, we really solidified ourselves, irrespective of a bankrupt shareholder. Here we are doing a deal with GE, which is one of the biggest companies in the world.
That's crazy, man. You know what I get from all of that is, here we are in 2026, but I think we're all very quick to forget what 2008 really looked like. I mean, that was the worst recession that we've seen since the Great Depression. And you're coming into Portugal in 2010, looking at Lehman Brothers toxic debt, where you couldn't go a day watching the news without hearing about Lehman Brothers and failed banks. And here you are trying to make one of the biggest decisions of your entire life. To me, and you said it, it was the make or break. It's like, it's in times like those where you have to really stand behind what you believe. For times like this, which is now you're building an entire community. We're going to go into some of the metrics of Arrow and how many people are at the company when you started versus today, but you put your balls on the line, sorry to say it, and took a big risk, and it paid off. And I think it's in times like '08, which none of us want to think about or remember, where you can have these huge make or breaks. And so, hey, I think you guys did an incredible thing. And it leads me, John, to you once, I had read, shared a story that when you took over leadership at White Star in Portugal, instead of sitting in your office and staying in your office, you'd spend, I guess, a ton of time sitting in the cafeteria with different teams. And I want to know, at that moment, you could have stayed in your office, you could have led from the very top. Why didn't you? Why didn't you have this different approach?
I think it's for the same reason I don't do it today. I don't like being in the office by myself. I'm much more of a people person, and I like being out and really getting a feel for what's going on in the businesses. I think part of that is why I travel so much these days too. I'm constantly on a plane. Arrow operates in 8 geographies in Europe. And my home base is New York, so I'm constantly going across the ocean. And when I do that, I'll hit 2 or 3 different countries, cities, but I like to be inside of what's going on. And I think the only way to do that is to actually be on the ground, talking to the people, talking to the leadership, but also talking to everybody. I love it. I think it's something that they in Europe didn't do as much of. If you go again back to 2010. That was very much hierarchical. That was very much, the suits up top, and, very much, chain of command and things that are quite different than working in the U.S. Culture in business. And so when I went there, it was a completely different, from my perspective. I was just doing your normal John thing. I wasn't thinking about being different. It was just what I did and how I knew how to lead. And I think it was such a breath of fresh air for everybody over there, that a lot of the things we did was interesting, has become norm now in Portugal. I mean, when I got there, everybody wore a suit and tie, and today that's not the case anymore. We had dress down Fridays, or casual Fridays, and then it became casual every day. And so we brought a bunch of culture from the U.S. that was quite endearing, and allowed us to also staff correctly, and people were really happy to join us. But yeah, I mean, you don't get a feel for the company when you got, at the time, I think we had 80 people. Then we grew to about 450 people just in White Star in Portugal. Today in Portugal, I think we're over 3,000 people, just to give us a dimension. But, it's not that you don't trust your leadership. You absolutely trust your leadership, but you want to hear from everybody. You want to hear a little bit about what's going on in different places. And it's not that you're trying to find any news that's sort of different from what your leadership is telling you. It's more for making sure that people feel that they're valued, And I've always, going back to my days in Mount Vernon or Eastchester, or my parents, etc. It's always been a question of just making sure everybody feels valued, and that everybody is as important as anybody else. And again, having a father and a mother who were blue collar people, and my father was just as important as a mechanic, as some accountant who was doing something else. I mean, there's a role and a place for everybody. And in our organizations, the bottom rung, call it in terms of hierarchy, who might be a junior analyst, at times will bring you in one of the biggest deals in your pipeline, because he's friends with somebody at some other place who has a deal, and that became a connection. And I always made sure that our teams are very aware that I would not allow this hierarchy concept that was in Europe. It was really instilled in Europe, that somehow someone who's a junior is so much less than someone who's a senior. That doesn't work for me. Everybody's an individual, everybody's a person, and everybody's views are valid. And then you make decisions off of that, but I don't want to demean anybody. I never wanted that to happen in my organization, and especially not because of social standing or hierarchy or anything like that.
I agree with all of what you've just said. And I think most leaders out there, they profess everybody should be treated equally, right? Very few actually do. And you see it over and over again. And I would ask you where that belief came from. I know where that belief came from. Your upbringing, your parents. But I always say, treat others how you would like to be treated. And if you do that, no matter where you are or who you're with, great things will come from it. And going back to your meetings, it's like, this is such a people person business, and you're a family guy now with children. I don't know how often you're on an airplane, but when COVID happened and everybody was doing Zooms, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be tough. I need to see you. I need you to see me. I need you to hear me. I need you to see my expressions. Like, we are in such a people person business that I believe in everything you just said. You've got to get on that plane. You've got to make that effort, and you've got to be in front of people for the real deals to get done. That leads me to Arrow. So over 5 years, the company's grown. You touched on it, from 80 people to over 400 people. Assets under management have expanded from 750 million euros to, I think, around 4 billion euros under management. Like, what did you do intentionally to make all these people around you feel safe? How do you do it? And like, how does it work for you? Because here you are at the very top, you're dealing with all these people below. How do you go out of your way to make them feel equal and empower them?
Yeah, I think, and by the way, you're quoting the numbers as you should about Portugal, because that's what we've been discussing. So Arrow in Portugal with White Star is what you just said. The reality is Arrow in Portugal has grown significantly with other firms that we've bought in other assets. And so in Portugal alone, we have about 3,000 people or so that spans credit and real estate asset management, real estate development, hospitality management, and what we call special situations. But we have grown that business, as you said, from those 70 people to today's 3,000. From those 700 million of assets, we actually manage just over, I think, 10 billion of assets just in Portugal. And Arrow, as a group that I lead, Zach Louis being the founder, is in 8 geographies. We manage about 125 billion of assets across Europe itself. So we have grown significantly by any measure. I mean, we basically have doubled every 3 years, I think is the running number. In Portugal, we have a very strong position, obviously. When you manage that many assets in a country of that size, that would put you in a very strong position, and we are. I mean, we are the leaders in just about every category in the credit space, from distressed, investing in distressed assets to hospitality investment to real estate development. We also do what they call affordable housing there, and other things. So, it's been, how do you do these things, right, James? You do these things because you put a great team around you. It's not about just one person. It is about the teams that you put around you. I think going back to this discussion we were having about how you lead and the type of, I feel like if you're doing it the right way and you respect people, the people you hire are also of the same ilk, and therefore they also hire that way. And then you create a really good bench and a really good group to work with. And that's been the secret sauce for all these years, is that we've been able to find really great people, a lot of people that I would say is a good blend between operational expertise, commercial expertise, entrepreneurs versus, more operational based folks. And it's worked out extremely well. I mean, again, in Portugal, it's been our test bed for some of the things. So for the hospitality, started in Portugal. We have now done hospitality in Spain, Mallorca, in Italy, Sicily, and Sardinia. So we are starting to expand our hospitality footprint. But the biggest hospitality we have right now is in Portugal. And I know we're going to get into it. A lot of when we talk about hospitality is not just a hotel, it's more of a destination. And so it's kind of a unique way to attack that segment of the market.
I love it, man. Listen, you guys are crushing it. For anybody watching, if you haven't got yourself to Europe, book yourself a flight and get over there. Portugal is one of the most, I think, beautiful countries. I don't even know if we're going to have time to talk about it, but I know there's also serious incentives to living in Portugal today, visas and all sorts of really great things. And from everything I'm hearing, just here on the west coast of America, a lot of Americans are actually moving to Portugal because of tax advantages and visa situations and things of that nature, which I hope we can have time to jump into later. But hospitality, which is a big word, I think Arrow's approach to hospitality feels almost as if it's fundamentally different. You're not just out there buying hotels. You're actually building places that people want to live in, they want to be a part of. And I think when we look at a lot of these hospitality investors, people are just chasing quick yields, right? They're not necessarily looking at things differently, which is how, from everything I can see, Arrow do things. So I guess my question to you is, what's the trade-off that you're willing to accept by building ecosystems instead of just looking at yields?
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at it and question there, Jazz, because, you look at our funds that we've raised and the money we've raised over these years and the assets we have under management and what our track record has done over these years. We're a fund manager that's returned in excess of 15% IRRs over these last 18 years in business, very consistently. And so if you're going to look to do 15 to 20 IRR type of returns, you look at what we're trying to do. That's tough to do if you're just buying a hotel in the middle of Lisbon and making it slightly better. Well, that's nice. I'd like to buy that really, really cheap and be able to turn that around the next day and flip it. But the reality is this business and even Europe, if you look at the U.S., the U.S. is a very commoditized business at this point in time, right? Everybody knows everything. Information flows are great. There's a lot of people in that world, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say things are tighter when you buy things in the U.S. because there's just a lot of information out there and a lot of people know it. Europe, when I got there in 2010, was very asymmetric, still is, very bifurcated. Each country is its own country, even though they talk about it as the EU. And then even in each country, you have each area is quite different. I mean, Lisbon, Porto, Algarve are different, and Italy, Milan, Rome, and Sicily are different. Like, it's not all the same. The laws are different. The tax laws are like everything is different about it. It's like having 50 states, but having different rules for 50 states. They don't speak the same language either. And so when you look at trying to build and get to those higher level returns, what we found in the hospitality, which happened a lot in Portugal, but Spain as well, especially Southern Europe, which is where I focus a lot of my investment time. You had a lot of broken projects that started in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, which were these resorts that were being built out. Villa Mora is an example, but that's even a city resort. I would say that's even slightly more than a normal resort like we have in Palmares, Monterrey, and other places. These resorts sort of floundered around a bit. And part of why they floundered around and why we're doing something different is that the thesis was that you do this great resort, you're going to do these great homes on it, you're going to have these great golf courses, and you're going to drive people there to buy homes on these great golf courses, etc. What they probably did backwards was that they never built the hotels. They never built the hospitality aspect of these resorts, right? You're very familiar with Quinta do Lago. Even Quinta do Lago only has a couple of hotels for such a big, what I would call resort. And those hotels have gone through different hands over the last years as well. Many of the other ones actually have no hotel. So you'd have this beautiful resort that's being established, like Monterrey, which we own, or Palmares that we now own, and they never had a hotel. So they were trying to draw enough people to upkeep, let's call it the golf course and everything. Well, that's really difficult with just a few people buying homes on the whole resort. And so it's kind of backwards, right? And what we did is when we bought these projects is that we really started to a couple of things. Number one, immediately start the strategy of putting in the hotel. So you look at our Palmares investment in Lagos, the first thing we're doing is we have now an agreement with JW Marriott, and we're going to bring in the first JW Marriott to Portugal. And that's going to, and that's just anchor what is now a beautiful golf course that's there, 27-hole golf course, as well as some apartments, as well as houses, brand new residences, the whole thing going on there. And that's worked out well now, but that's because we're investing in the hotel, which is not what the previous 3 owners had done, who all probably had, I would call it, different levels of success or not success on that resort. And you look at something maybe like Villa Mora, which is a much bigger version of everything there. What we found there is that in order to really take the best benefit of it, you really needed to own the ecosystem and the amenities. And I keep going always back to the same thing. When we're buying destinations, and these are all destinations by nature, what you want to do is you want to control the amenity set and you want to control the ecosystem. Yeah. And you want to do that for various reasons, right? Number one is you want to have consistent quality. And so when you have golf courses and marinas and hotels and equestrian centers and a lot of residential and a lot of apartments, touristic apartments, etc. If the quality isn't the same across many of these things, well, then how are you going to charge X for a great golf course if your hotels are not at the same standard, right? If you've got a hotel that is maybe a 50 euro experience, then your golf course can't be more than a 50 euro experience. But if you've got golf courses that deserve to be a 200 euro experience, but your hotel is only a 10 year, like, you got to have the ecosystem.
You got to do it all together, not piecemeal it together, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And that's what we did. We're really buying up all the pieces, bringing it all back together, and then started to create experiences, and maybe even for a different client, maybe not so much what you've experienced in the past, but bringing over the Americans, bringing over other individuals who are looking more for an experience and a destination where they can come. And in a week, they could do the beach, but they can also do golf, and they could do equestrian, and they could do wine tasting, and they could do many different things just with us.
Love it, man. Look, you mentioned it earlier, Quinta del Lago. That's where I used to stay, which is wild. And for anybody listening, and by the way, anybody listening in London right now, this is all making sense to them, and they are probably already very familiar with what you're building. But you guys are building a city. This is not just a developer that I'm speaking with. Arrow are building a city. If I'm not mistaken, it's 23 hotels, 2,700 rooms, 12 golf courses, marinas, residential developments. Like, we're not talking about just a hotel here. But for those of you who don't know, and John, you've coined it yourself, the Algarve is like the Florida of Southern Europe, right? When you look at the Algarve through a 20-year lens, climate, lifestyle, accessibility, why does it hold up when other markets don't necessarily hold up?
It's interesting talking to you, James, because you're from the UK. You know Algarve extremely well because you grew up going there. And many of the guys, from Britain and the UK, Ireland,
yes.
You guys are like, that is your Florida. Like, what are you talking about, John? That is Florida.
It was Marbella. It was either the south of Spain or the south of Portugal, and that was kind of it. And none of us could afford the south of France, right? So the Algarve, I mean, God, I could tell you some stories. Probably not appropriate, but I cannot wait to fly out there and see what's actually going on. I really can't.
And something that never changes, James, because I know you and I share passion for Señor Frango, so we still have to meet.
Señor Franco, Mr. Chicken. Whoever's listening or watching, go check out that spot. That is an unbelievable restaurant. Yes.
So in any case, you look at what Portugal has to offer, and I think now people are kind of starting to understand it. Over the last couple of years, it's become much more in people's day-to-day. When I was a kid, I remember talking about Portugal, and I was like, well, is that a province of Spain or where is it? I don't, it was nobody knew about it. It's become much more prominent in the press and everything else. There's a lot of things going right for Portugal, and this is why I think it could be the Florida of Europe, but it also could be a great destination to retire for Americans, as we see so many Americans now moving there, and other nationalities, etc. I'd say a couple of things. Number one, it is still the second best continental. It's still the second best English-speaking country in Europe, outside of the Netherlands. So that's super important, right? I mean, everybody speaks English. Everybody speaks English in Portugal. And it's because they start day one. So they start, in kindergarten, they have to take English. It's a requirement. but also because and you were there, they don't dub their movies, they don't dub their TV or anything. It's in English, it's in American or British or whatever it is, and then they subtitle it in Portuguese, and so it's become a very well spoken English nation, which is important from that perspective. People feel like they can go there and they can have conversations. They don't need to necessarily know the language, the local language, and they can get by very easily. Second thing, it's a from a infrastructure perspective, it's wonderful. It's got great highways, roads, schools, healthcare system, etc. So from that perspective, it's well suited. It's still relatively cheap, still much cheaper than the UK and Ireland and France and Spain and all the others. And then on top of that, I think culturally, it's got a tremendous culture. They're still easygoing. It's laid back. People still want to help one another. It's very accommodating. It's very peaceful there. They never really, when we had a revolution in the early 70s, they call it the Carnation Revolution because not a bullet was ever fired during the revolution. And so it's a peaceful country. And then obviously, since you know it extremely well, the weather is fantastic. The beaches are incredible. The food and the wine is off the charts. Yeah. And so it has basically everything going for it. And I think, when I think about Florida, when I think about other places in the U.S. that people are retiring to, why not Portugal? It's a 6-hour flight from New York. It's an overnight flight. You're there pretty quickly. It's very accommodating, and again, it's still relatively cheap, and you get a lot of good services and these amenities. And that's again why we've been so focused on these amenities and these ecosystems that we're building.
Question: what is the situation? And obviously, neither of us are immigration attorneys, but isn't there something with getting a visa? I'm sorry, I'm a novelist. You can get a visa there or something. I was having this conversation recently with someone, or it's a lottery, or I can't remember what it was.
You can actually. What they used to have what they call the golden visa, which was more tied to you can buy real estate. Nowadays it's slightly different. We are actually launching our golden visa program this month, at the end of this month, beginning of next month. And what that means is that you, as someone who wants to have a visa in Portugal and then be able to get a passport there eventually, you'd have to invest $500,000 into what they call a fund in Portugal. And that fund in Portugal has to invest in, call it corporates, like enterprises. So investing in other businesses. We are doing that ourselves. So that's something that we have built out. We're offering that golden visa. Again, it's coming out shortly. And people will be able to invest alongside Arrow here in some of these assets that we already own. Because one of the things we haven't mentioned is, although we're investing in hospitality and all these other things, we also have invested in what I call the vertical supply chain. So we own a couple of companies. Like we own a company that actually builds furniture and all the all of the fittings for hotels. And
you might as well at this point. You're building enough. You might as well, right?
Exactly. Might as well own the supply chain. So we own that. We own the tile company. We actually own a general contractor. So we have a vertical supply. And if you invest in that golden visa fund, you would be investing in that vertical supply chain.
Very, very cool. So, John, now let's zoom out for a sec. You built these incredible destinations as full ecosystems, right? You've got the hotels, the golfs, the marinas, the residential component. It's like it's a whole world, so to speak, right? But let's make it real for somebody watching or listening right now. We finish the episode. I click on the link in the description. I fill out the form on the Arrow website because I want to learn, understand more. What happens next? What does the first real conversation with Arrow actually look like? Like, how does that work for somebody listening that's got some interest or some level of interest?
Yeah, you click on the link. Hopefully you get a good email response, which we believe you do. And then you if you want to talk to a live person, you'll talk to a live person, and that person will tell you all about the destination and what we're building, depending on which of the assets you're interested in. They may be able to talk you through a couple of different assets. Maybe you're looking at Palmares, but they'll also tell you about Vila Moura and things that we own, not just in Algarve. We own other resorts up in what is now people call Comporta, just north of that, Troia, and also up in the Porto area. We have a resort up there called Valpizão. So there's a couple of different places to possibly look to buy something. They'll walk you through whatever it is that you're going to ask, to be honest with you, Jake. If you ask about the visa program, they'll discuss a little bit about that. If you want to talk about, what it looks like to live there, they'll talk to you all about that. If you want to know some more about, moving to Portugal and what that process looks like, they'll talk about that. If you then want to buy something with us and you want to buy something that is a rental property, something that you can rent, so not just, like an investment property, they can discuss that as well. We have a lot of things, to be honest with you. So if you wanted to buy a property that would be an investable income type of property, we can certainly turn you to that. If it's high end product, we sell 5 and 8 and $10 million solutions as well. It's just a little bit of everything, and they will take you through that process of what area of Portugal, what do you like to do, what do you like, what do you expect out of that adventure. Is it a permanent move? Is it a temporary move? Is it a vacation? Is it more of a investment? Is it more of maybe a retiring to Portugal? So they'll walk you through that. And then there's a whole concierge service around that as well. Like, because we own so much of the hospitality, we're able to offer a full concierge service to our buyers. So if somebody wants their refrigerator stocked with food prior to arriving, we'll do that as well. But we certainly could take care of the pool and the landscaping and any maintenance and things of that nature.
You cover everything. So if somebody reaches out, they're going to get the full rundown of what there is. Look, buying abroad can sometimes feel complicated at first. So I think the fact that you're able to take a lot of that intentionally off of an owner's plate the moment they buy in is something that would be very, very well received. And I think a lot of companies out there offer, this concierge service. What does that actually mean in practice at Arrow? Because from what I've heard, your concierge sort of service is on a whole nother level of what I've seen in Europe. Have owners ever called you in the middle of the night saying, I need something? What does concierge really mean? Because to someone buying in the US, we need to have that feeling of everything's taken care of. You just show up with your suitcase and your family and you're going to have the greatest time ever. So what does that look like in Arrow's eyes?
And it is that. I mean, again, it depends if you're buying or if you're visiting us for the first time and you want to have a week experience in the Algarve with us, and you want to say, okay, these are the things we like to do. They'll do a service for, they'll set up the plan for you for the week. They'll say, you want to spend this day here and that day you want to go see maybe a castle, or you want to go see a wine tasting, or you want the kids to go into the golf academy and learn golf for a day. Or, I mean, it really can personalize the entire trip, including which hotels to stay at, or which property to stay at, or which properties you may be interested in buying, etc. I mean, it's really catered to what you're trying to get out of it. Like I said, James, it's the reason it probably looks so wide is because it's wide in the offerings, right? Because we could talk to you about retirement living, or we could talk to you about visiting for a week, or we could talk to you about moving there part-time, or maybe investing in a property. Do you want to be near the beach? Do you want to be on a golf course? Do you want to be in a community that I would call more private, or a community that's more a city, like Villamora Resort? And so there's a little bit of everything. Do you want to be on the Ernie Els course?
Yeah, I want to talk about the Els courses. This is like the jewel in the portfolio, right? For all the golfers out there. It's a championship golf course. I've heard that it is next level. I guarantee, or I think I can guarantee, the next PGA Tour event is there in this year. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Congrats, by the way. And tell me something. That leads me to my next question. Like, when you guys look 5-10 years out, what part of the ownership experience do you think people are going to value even more than they do today? Like, how does Arrow look to adjusting to make that market fit down the road? Not today, but in, 3, 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah, I think, again, it depends on the different resorts. But if you look at Villamora as where it includes everything.
Yeah.
Villamora is quite interesting because it is what we call a city resort. We do have 5 golf courses just in that one area. We have 5 golf courses, 1,000-boat marina. We own most of the retail on the new marina in particular. We own a lot of the residential that's to build and being built. We also have 7 hotels there. We're building another one. We have an equestrian center, which goes live in February. It's been completely revamped. It's a 5-star jumping facility. Will be one of the best in all of Europe. 1,000-horse facility to give you just scale. It's really a scale there. We're also going to build a sports area. We own the sports academy there as well, and we're building out a big sports facility and world-class sports facility there as well in the next years. And what I've told people about Villamor as an example of what we're building to is it's a 0 to 100 age place. That means if you want to live there and grow up, you want to have your kids grow up there and go to a local school, like a school, a private school. That's something we can offer in Villamor. We're looking to build a second school now because we've kind of run out of space. But if you want to be with your young kids and your ability to like remote work and you want to make your life there and you want to grow your family there, you'll have all of the best offerings in that community to be able to raise your kids there. But if you're that grandparent, and I always use this as an example, so on the other side of that scale, if you're a grandparent, and I used to always joke about this with Florida. Florida's a great place that just came from it, but outside of Orlando, in many cases, right? Because you've got the parks, you've got Disney, you got Universal, you got SeaWorld. Of course, the kid's going to want to visit the grandparents because they're going to be hanging out at Disney World. But if you're in a community where there's not much to do visiting the grandparents, most kids will like hang around for a day or two and then be bored out. They'd be bored. And what we're trying to say is that Villamor has a lot to offer. Those kids can go and play at we have a country club that we're building with a lazy river in one of our community settings. Go there for a day. Go to Pinal, where we're doing like this pop stroke concept of golf and mini golf and a whole night, zone with a barbecue and everything. It's like, there's a thing to do. Then we are building a playhouse, like a retro playhouse down by the beach as well. And that's a nice community for the kids who want to go play retro video games, the diner, that kind of look. Then there's the beach. Then there's the golf. Then there's the water sports. Then there's you see what I'm saying, Jane? Like you as a grandparent can invite your grandkids there. They're going to want to stay with you forever.
What do you mean? You as a grandparent can invite your grandkids and never have to see them. This is, but I'm trying to think of an equivalent in the US of what Arrow are doing in Europe. And I mean, the closest I'm coming up with is Discoveryland, right? You're building a lifestyle. You are actually creating a lifestyle and you are doing it on such a big scale. You've got destinations. It's like, for me, you're buying into something more than just a property. It's truly incredible. I want to come back to you for a moment, and I know we're coming up to time, but what's a non-negotiable for you, John? Like, what do you want all of your team members to hold? What do you want all of your team members to carry on with them? At this stage, you've got everything at Arrow. There's a lot being built. Like, what do you want your team members to hold? What's still driving you forward and motivating you to make this the best development in the world?
Well, I think what you just said is what drives me. I have the passion and I have that people around me that share that same passion to really do well and to put a mark on something. From a legacy perspective, people ask, what's your legacy? And my legacy should be, and especially with my Portuguese background, to have created something of such value to Portugal is important to me. Not because of my notoriety, but more of just having left something of such great importance to Portugal is important to me. I think when you say what's non-negotiable for me is I live by a principle of doing right, and doing right is important to me. I don't handle. If you ask me what I don't handle well, I don't handle cheaters and liars and like that kind of stuff sticks with me in a really bad way. And so I need to work with people that are honest, people that have fun working. Like I have a lot of fun working, irrespective of how many hours and how difficult it may be and how frustrating it could be sometimes. You're still dealing with Southern Europe, so things don't move as fast as you want them to move.
No.
But you got to have the right attitude, and you got to really enjoy what you're doing. And I think that's the non-negotiable. The non-negotiable is if you don't like what you're doing, then you shouldn't be part of the team. If you can't be honest and be respectful of each other, you can't be part of the team. And just really, like I said, be a team player. I love what I do. I think the team around me has to love what they do. I think they do. This is high impact, high pressure, high everything. So, I can't have folks that are negative. I can't have folks that don't row in. I can't have folks I always say, like, I'm probably the hardest working. And the reason I'm the hardest working is because no one can ever accuse me of not being the hardest working if you work for me.
I feel the exact same way. I love that. You have to lead by example, right? You want people to work hard around you. You got to work hard yourself. John, let me ask you this. There's somebody listening right now who is seriously considering Portugal. What's the first smart step that they should take, in your opinion?
I think once you do this, you have the links right to our landing pages, and then you'll be able to put in sort of get more info. I do think that's probably one of the greatest steps, is really connect with someone like us, who in particular has so much to offer throughout so many parts of Portugal, right? So, and again, with the concierge service and the attention we'll give you, and we have a bunch of Americans on our staff, people that are Luso Americans like myself who speak English and Portuguese, and actually lived in the U.S. And so with the experiences of having lived here, etc. And we'll take you through the process, and we'll explain to you what Porto is quite different than Lisbon, which is quite different than Algarve, and what are you trying to get out of it, as I said before. And we'll walk you through that process of really understanding what Portugal has to offer, what our resorts have to offer. Again, if you look at Vila Moura, it's a city resort. I mean, if you want to live there, whether you're, 25 years old or you're 75 years old and anywhere in between, it's a great place. I mean, think of, where in the world do you have 5 golf courses that you could play with? And the Ernie Els course, which we just touched on a second ago, that's a members only golf course that we rebuilt because it was called Victoria. The PGA Champions Tour event is coming there for at least the next 5 years. It was completely redesigned. It's the only real private golf course in Portugal. We've had enormous demand for it. It's one of our jewels, and we have, we're building a lot of our residential still inside of that golf course and around it. So there's a lot of value there for individuals who are looking to maybe look at Portugal as a destination. And if you love golf or you love the water, we haven't talked enough about maybe the beaches, and obviously we have the #1 beach in the world, as voted the last couple of years, right there, Falesia, which is right there in Vila Moura, as well as the top marina in the world. And for the last 15 years, the Vila Moura Marina, with its 1,000 boats marina, is one of the best marinas around the world. So it's probably not known as much as it should be, but click on the links, putting your information, somebody will come back to you.
Most important question of the day. When you host my wife and kids in the summer with me when we come to Europe? Because I want to come and check this place out. It sounds
100%, James. You're always welcome. We had some of your other colleagues at the State Media with us these last couple of months, and we're very accommodating. You come by, and you and I in particular, we got to go to Mr. Chicken. So
yeah, we do. I'm not joking. July, August, you're going to be hearing from me very soon to figure out.
Well, let me know,
dates.
James. At the end of July, on that last week of July, is our PGA Champions Tour event. So that's when we will have the events, the only continental Europe event of the PGA Champions Tour. Again, it's going to be an incredible event. We have, I think, more than 75 players coming, which are all the best players in the world, older than 50 years old, and part of that tour, led by Ernie and some of the other great names that are playing on that tour these days. I think Freddie Couples and Ozabal and the Jimenez, and I think they're all coming. And John Daly, I believe, is coming too. So
I can pretend I know all of them. I know none of them, but I know it's gonna be unbelievable, John. And dude, I'm really happy we had you on as a guest. I think this should be a real reminder to anybody listening that leadership isn't about titles or hierarchy. And I think you've really explained that very well. It's about presence, it's about patience, and it's about growing and building something that lasts. And so I'll say this, whether you're leading a team, investing for the long term, or thinking about what ownership could look like in the southern parts of Portugal and the Algarve, the same principles apply. I'll say this, if you guys want to learn more about Arrow's destinations in the Algarve, Portugal, go check out the link in the description. It's right below. We do have to wrap up this segment today. I'm James Harris, and this is Rise Above the Ranks. John, thank you so much for joining us today. And until next time, keep rising, and thank you so much for tuning in and listening.